The laptop should have been asleep. Lila Brooks knew that before she crossed the threshold of Evan Mercer's office. Every other screen on the executive floor had gone dark at 10. This one still glowed across a desk she had been told never to touch unless it was clear. She checked the time on her cart. 10:46 p.m. 14 minutes before the alarm changed zones. Lila emptied the wastebasket, wiped the glass table, then stopped beside the desk. A vendor code sat at the top of the screen. Northline 47. She had not seen it in 6 years, but she remembered. Northline Transit Services had been created for emergency freight during a warehouse expansion that never happened. The account had gone dormant before Mercer Industrial Supply outsourced her old accounts payable department. Below the code was a total. $2,041,880.16. The screen dimmed. No. Lila touched the trackpad. The payment batch brightened again. Emergency transfer. Offsite handling. Expedited freight. 14 months of charges, but no receiving numbers, dock appointments, or wait tickets. The office door opened behind her. "What are you doing?" Lila turned. Evan Mercer stood in the doorway, coat over one arm, phone in his hand. "I'm cleaning your office." "With your hand on my computer?" The screen was open. "So you read it?" "I checked a batch number." His face went still. "Step away from the desk." She moved beside her cart. "Batch 6F219. Northline Transit." Evan crossed the room and turned the laptop toward himself. "Who gave you permission to access confidential files?" "No one." "Then we have nothing else to discuss." He raised his phone. "You should call your receiving department first." His thumb paused. "That vendor was inactive when I worked here," Lila said. "If they moved $2 million worth of freight, your warehouse should have a trail." "You worked here?" 17 years in accounts payable. Before Mercer outsourced us." The elevator chimed. Ruth Bell hurried into the office, gray braids loose from their knot. "Mr. Mercer, security said there was a problem. Your employee was searching my laptop." "I kept the screen awake," Lila said. "There's more than $2 million paid to a vendor that shouldn't be active." Evan pointed toward the hall. "You are removed from this building effective now." Ruth stared at him. "Can we slow down?" "We just did." "If I'm wrong," Lila said, "you fired a cleaner for touching your laptop. And if you're right? Then somebody stole $2 million from your company, and you just fired the person who noticed." The words landed before Lila fully understood what his decision would cost. 3 years of night shifts. 3 years of never missing a room, never losing a key, never giving anyone a reason to doubt her. The job paid less than the accounting position she once held, but it covered rent, medicine, and the small emergencies that could overturn a month. More than that, Ruth had trusted her when other employers saw only her age. "You're firing me without checking?" she asked. "I'm removing a contractor who accessed confidential information." "I touched a trackpad. I didn't open the file." "You had no right to read it." "No. But the money still left." Ruth stepped closer. "Lila, let me handle this." Lila reached into her cart and pulled out the blue notebook where she tracked broken locks and missing supplies. She wrote the batch number while it was still sharp in her mind. Evan watched her. "What are you writing?" "The number you won't check." His jaw tightened. "Security will escort you out." Lila capped the pen. Humiliation burned through her, but beneath it sat something colder. She pushed the cart into the hall. The elevator doors closed between them. Ruth stood beside her in silence, one hand pressed to her mouth. Lila looked down at the batch number in her notebook. She had spent 6 years being told that the work she used to do no longer belonged to her. The knowledge had stayed anyway. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, she had made her first choice. She was going to prove what she saw. Lila's apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator motor and the faint rattle of traffic 6 floors below. She set the blue notebook on the kitchen table and wrote the batch number again on a clean page. 6F219. Then she drew what she remembered of the screen. Vendor code in the upper left. Total beneath it. Approval column on the right. A row of invoice descriptions in the middle. She could not recall every date, but the format was familiar. Mercer had changed software twice while she worked there, yet the accounting logic had stayed the same. A batch beginning with 6 meant indirect operating expense. The letter marked a manual exception. The final numbers identified the processing sequence. She stared at the page until the lines doubled. Maybe she had misunderstood. Maybe Northline had been reactivated. Maybe the missing receiving numbers sat on another screen. Maybe Evan was right and she had turned one glance into a crime because she still resented the company for replacing her department with a vendor in another state. Lila rubbed her forehead. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Ruth. She called back. "Where are you?" Ruth asked. "Home. Security made me sign an incident report. They took your badge." "I know." "No, you don't know. Evan Mercer's office wants written confirmation that you're off every Mercer property by 8 in the morning. Lila looked at the notebook. "Did they give you my cart?" "They locked it in the service room. My notebook came with me." "Of course it did." Ruth exhaled. "Tell me you didn't copy anything else." "I copied what was already in my head." "That is not comforting." Ruth, Northline was dormant. 6 years ago. It was created for the Dayton expansion. When the expansion was canceled, we closed the purchase orders. There was no reason to keep paying them. Companies reuse vendors. Then receiving records will show it. "And how exactly are you planning to see those?" Lila had no answer. Ruth's voice softened. "You need sleep. We'll talk in the morning." "I won't be sleeping." "I figured." At 7:30, Lila was waiting outside Bell Facility Services with 2 coffees and the blue notebook tucked inside her coat. Ruth arrived in an old green sedan, saw her through the windshield and rested her head against the steering wheel before getting out. "I brought yours without sugar," Lila said. "You think coffee is going to make this reasonable?" "No. But it might make you listen." Inside, the contractor's office smelled of copier toner and lemon cleaner. A whiteboard listed buildings, crews, and hours. Mercer occupied the largest section. Ruth set the incident report on her desk. "Read it." Lila did. The report said she had been discovered accessing executive financial information. It said she refused repeated instructions to leave the workstation. It said her conduct created a possible confidentiality breach. "That isn't what happened." "I know." "Then why did you sign it?" "I signed that I received it." Ruth tapped the bottom line. "Not that I agreed." Lila's anger loosened a fraction. Ruth sat back. The building manager called again. "Mercer is cutting our executive floor hours until they review security. That's 6 people losing part of next week's pay." "I'm sorry." "Are you sorry enough to let this go?" Lila looked through the office window at the crews collecting keys and supply lists. "What's happening at the warehouse?" Ruth frowned. "Why?" "Last night I said people were losing hours. Evan asked how I knew about warehouse losses." "Everybody knows. Mercer's been talking about restructuring for months." "Restructuring is a word. What are they actually doing?" Ruth hesitated. "Len said the board committee meets Monday. They may close the West warehouse and move everything to Indiana." Lila sat very still. "Monday?" That's what he heard. "And they're blaming operating losses?" "Inventory shrinkage, freight overruns, low productivity." "Pick a phrase." The descriptions from the laptop returned to Lila. "Emergency transfer. Offsite handling. Expedited freight." "Those invoices could be sitting inside the warehouse loss," she said. Ruth folded her arms. "Could be. If they close that site, records move. People scatter. Everyone remembers the warehouse as the problem." "You don't know that." "No. I know there's a vote Monday and I know somebody paid Northline more than $2 million. Ruth looked at her for a long moment. "What are you asking me to do?" "Confirm the exact time Evan fired me and the time security took my badge." "That proves nothing about the money. It proves what I could and couldn't access after I left. And I need the name of whoever manages internal audit now." Ruth shook her head. "You are not walking into that building again." "I won't sneak in." "That is a very low standard." Lila closed the notebook. "I'm going through the front door." At 9:15, she stood in Mercer Industrial Supply's marble lobby wearing the same brown coat she had left in the night before. Her cleaning badge was gone. The receptionist recognized her and immediately reached for the phone. "I'm here to speak with Evan Mercer," Lila said. "He isn't available. Tell him batch 6F219 begins with a manual exception and ends with a payment to Northline Transit." The receptionist's hand stopped above the keypad. "He'll know what that means. He asked that you not be admitted. Then don't admit me. Call him." Security arrived first. Lila did not argue when they asked her to step away from the desk. She stood near the revolving doors, hands visible, while the morning crowd moved around her. 10 minutes later, Evan crossed the lobby with his tie loosened and annoyance already on his face. "You were told not to return." "I was told I couldn't work here." "I'm not working. This is not a game." "No. Monday isn't far away." His expression changed. "What happens Monday? You tell me." He glanced toward the security officers. "You have 5 minutes. Open the batch." "We are not doing that in the lobby." "Fine. Before you open it, I'll tell you what you'll see. Northline is classified as emergency freight. The charges repeat in amounts too small for a board-level approval, and at least one batch begins with a manual exception." "How could you know that?" "Because whoever built it wanted the expense to look ordinary." Evan studied her face. "And if you're wrong?" "I leave and never contact Mercer again." "And if you're right?" "You give your internal auditor permission to check whether anything arrived." He looked toward the elevators, then back at her. 5 minutes, he said. "You touch nothing." Lila followed him past security. For the first time since the elevator doors had closed on her, she had a plan. The internal audit office was 3 floors below Evan's. It had no city view, no glass conference table, and no art except a framed copy of the company's code of conduct. Maya Chin stood when Evan brought Lila in. She was younger than Lila expected, with black hair cut at her jaw and a pencil balanced across one hand. "This is Lila Brooks," Evan said. "She worked in accounts payable before the outsourcing. And last night she was a contract cleaner," Maya said. Lila met her eyes. "This morning I'm the person who remembers a vendor code." Maya looked at Evan. "You said there was a possible privacy incident." "There was. There may also be a transaction question." "That is a careful sentence." "It's the sentence I'm giving you." Maya motioned toward a chair against the wall. "Ms. Brooks, sit there. Do not approach my desk. Do not photograph the screen. Do not write down employee names, bank details, or account numbers. You may answer questions. You may suggest search terms. You may not direct the review." Lila Saturday understood. Evan remained standing behind Maya. "Search batch 6F219. Maya did not move. "On what authority?" "Mine." "Your authority can request an audit query. It cannot make this an audit finding." "Then query it." Maya entered several commands. Her screen was angled away from Lila, but Lila watched Maya's expression instead. First concentration. Then a slight tightening around the mouth. "The batch exists," Maya said. Evan's shoulders shifted. "Vendor?" Lila asked. Maya did not answer her. "Northline Transit Services." "Classification." "Emergency freight and off-site transfer." Evan stepped closer. "Total?" Maya read the number twice before saying it aloud. $2,041,880.16 over 14 months. The room went quiet. Lila felt no satisfaction. Confirmation only made the problem heavier. Maya turned to her. "How much of that did you see last night?" "The vendor code, the total, part of the descriptions, and the batch number." "You memorized all of it?" "I processed thousands of payments here. I used to catch transposed digits before breakfast." Evan said, "Could the charges be legitimate?" "Of course," Maya replied. "A large total is not proof of misconduct." Lila nodded. "Then we check what should exist if they're legitimate." Maya's pencil stopped moving. You asked what I saw. I'm telling you what it connects to. Tell me without assuming our procedures are the same as they were 6 years ago." That landed harder than Lila wanted it to. Fair. She thought for a moment. Emergency freight can bypass a purchase order schedule. It can't bypass reality. Something was picked up. Something was delivered. Someone weighed it, received it, signed for it, reported an exception, or paid a destination bill. Maya wrote each item down. Anything else? If Northline did off-site transfers, there should be origin and destination locations. If it provided handling only, there should be job references tied to inventory movement. Evan asked, "How long to check?" Maya looked at him. "Longer if I have to explain every step while I do it." He took the hint and sat at the end of the table. Maya opened the vendor profile. Northline was reactivated 18 months ago. By whom? Lila asked. That is not a question I'm answering in front of an outside party. I'm the outside party who got fired over it. And that may make you a witness. It does not make you an auditor. Lila pressed her lips together. 6 years earlier, she had trained new employees to respect the same boundary. Being on the other side of it felt like standing outside her own house while someone else decided which room she could remember. Maya continued. The vendor file contains current tax documentation, insurance certification, and an active payment destination. So it looks complete, Evan said. It looks populated. Lila almost smiled. She liked that distinction. Maya pulled the invoice list. The charges varied from $18,000 to $49,000. None crossed $50,000. Evan noticed. Why does that matter? Maya answered before Lila could. Payments above $50,000 require a second executive review. They kept them under the line, Lila said. Maya gave her a warning look. Or the services naturally cost less than the line. Do 37 emergency freight jobs naturally cost $49,000 and change? Ms. Brooks. Right. Not directing. Maya requested the receiving history. A message appeared. Access pending, operations archive. How long? Evan asked. The current system should return 2 years within an hour. Older linked records may take longer. Lila leaned back. Check exception reports too. Maya added the request. A knock sounded at the open door. Daniel Price stood in the hall. He wore a dark blue suit and the mild, interested expression of someone arriving at a meeting he had not been invited to but expected to control. Evan, he said. I heard there was a vendor query. Evan stood. Who told you? Finance Controls notified my office when audit accessed an active freight account. Daniel's gaze moved to Lila. And I heard we had a visitor. Lila knew him by sight. He had joined Mercer after her department was outsourced. In company newsletters he was always photographed beside charts. Daniel stepped inside. Daniel Price. Chief Financial Officer. Lila Brooks. Yes. I read the incident report. Then you read one version. His smile remained. There should only be one factual version. Maya closed the vendor profile. I'm conducting a preliminary control check. On Northline? Daniel asked. Evan answered. Ms. Brooks recognized the account on my laptop. Daniel turned to him slowly. Your laptop. It was open. And she was reading it? I touched the trackpad, Lila said. You all seem very attached to that part. Daniel ignored the remark. Northline handles emergency transfers that our standard receiving reports don't capture cleanly. We discussed those costs during the warehouse review. I don't remember the name, Evan said. You approved grouped expense batches. There was no reason you would. Lila watched Evan absorb that answer. It sounded reasonable. That made it dangerous. Daniel looked at Maya. I'll have my team send the service summaries. I've already requested source records, Maya said. Of course. I'm offering context. He faced Lila again. Ms. Brooks, I understand you had a long history here. Losing a position after 17 years can leave unresolved feelings. My feelings didn't receive $2 million. No. But they may affect what you think the number means. Evan stepped between them. Daniel let Maya finish. Certainly. Daniel adjusted one cuff. I only want to ensure an old grievance doesn't become an allegation before anyone understands the work. Lila stood. Maya immediately raised a hand. I'm leaving, Lila said. You told me not to approach the desk. Evan followed her into the corridor. Daniel came a few steps behind. At the elevator, Daniel said, if you remember something relevant, send it through counsel. Do not contact employees or vendors. You no longer have authorized access to company information. Lila pressed the down button. Numbers should leave a physical trail. Daniel's pleasant expression thinned. The elevator opened. As Lila stepped inside, she understood that he had learned something from her, just as she had learned something from him. Daniel Price was not surprised by Northline. And now he knew they were looking for deliveries. At 1:30 Friday afternoon, Maya called Lila from a number she did not recognize. Can you be at the West Warehouse in 40 minutes? Yes. I haven't told you why. You wouldn't call to show me that everything matched. A brief pause. 40 minutes. Bring no notes except the batch number you already recorded. The West Warehouse sat beside a rail spur on the industrial edge of Columbus. Lila had not been inside since the week before Mercer eliminated her department. The brick offices looked smaller now, but the loading bays still stretched nearly a quarter-mile beneath faded blue numbers. Maya met her at the security desk. You are here as an interview subject with historical process knowledge. Len Ortiz will answer operational questions. You will not access records yourself. Understood. You say that quickly. I'm practicing. Len came through the double doors wearing a reflective vest over a flannel shirt. His hair had gone almost completely white, but his heavy walk was the same. He stared at Lila. Well, I'll be damned. Probably, she said. But not today. He hugged her before Maya could object. I heard what happened upstairs, Len said. Half the building heard. Then half the building heard it wrong. That part hasn't changed. He turned to Maya. What do you need? Maya handed him a list of invoice dates. Northline Transit. We need receiving activity connected to these dates or invoice references. Len read the first page, then the second. Never heard of them. Could they have handled off-site transfers? Anything's possible if finance gives it a name. Maya did not smile. What records would exist? Len led them into the receiving office. 4 workers sat behind windows overlooking the docks. Trucks reversed toward open bays, warning signals pulsing in the cold air. For a normal delivery, we have a dock appointment, gate entry, bill of lading, receiver, and inventory transaction, Len said. Emergency freight can skip the appointment. It can't skip the gate unless it never comes here. And if it never comes here? Lila asked. Then there should be a destination record. Somebody signs for it somewhere. Maya gave Len the first invoice number. He entered it into the receiving system. No result. The second produced no result either. By the 10th, Len stopped making comments. By the 20th, he was leaning close to the monitor as if the missing information might appear if he stared hard enough. 2 invoice numbers produced records. One was a small shipment of replacement motors from Kentucky. The other was a pallet transfer from the Indiana warehouse. Together, the actual freight charges totaled less than $26,000. Maya checked her list. Northline invoiced more than $300,000 across those same dates. Len sat back. Then they didn't invoice us for those 2 loads. Why not? Because I know the carriers. Neither was Northline. Lila felt the first shape of the scheme harden. Check weight tickets. Maya glanced at her. You asked what should exist, Lila said. Emergency loads get weighed when inventory counts are uncertain. Len opened a separate archive. No Northline entries appeared. Gate logs, Lila said. Already requested, Maya replied. The results arrived 20 minutes later. Nothing. They walked onto the dock. Forklifts moved behind yellow lines. Len pointed toward a small office above the bays. Dispatch keeps exception calls up there. If a truck gets rerouted, damaged, refused, or sent to another site, somebody documents it because inventory has to land somewhere. Could Daniel's off-site work avoid all of this? Maya asked. Len rubbed his jaw. If Northline moved office furniture, maybe. If it moved company inventory, no. Finance can call it offsite. The boxes still exist. Lila looked down the long row of bays. How many people lose work if this place closes? 83 here. More if they cut local routes. Is Monday's vote confirmed? Len nodded. They say freight overruns prove we can't manage this site. The silence that followed felt different from the audit office. Here, the missing money had faces, lockers, lunch boxes, and cars lined up outside. Maya's phone rang. She listened, said very little, then ended the call. Evan wants us upstairs. Daniel has the service summaries. The meeting began at 4 in Evan's office. Daniel had arranged 3 folders in front of him. Evan stood by the windows. Lila remained near the door, deliberately far from the laptop. Daniel opened the first folder. Northline coordinated emergency transfers between supplier locations and temporary storage sites. Because the goods did not enter Mercer facilities, normal receiving records would not apply. Maya held out her hand. Source documents. These are summaries generated from finance records. I requested destination receipts, bills of lading, and service locations. Those files are being gathered. Lila said, name one storage site. Daniel turned to her. This is an internal review. Then answer Maya. Maya kept her voice level. Please identify the locations. Daniel opened the second folder. Several were short-term arrangements made through freight brokers. The details may be archived with the brokers rather than Mercer. Name one broker, Lila said. Evan gave her a warning look, but Daniel answered. Midstate Logistics for one. Lila knew Midstate. They handled refrigerated freight, not industrial parts. She did not say it. Not yet. Maya asked, who at Mercer confirmed completion before payment? Operations provided verbal verification during weekly cost calls. Len was not in the room, but Lila could almost hear his response. Evan said, verbal verification for $2 million? Across 14 months in an emergency program you approved. I approved a cost control program. I don't remember approving Northline. Daniel's expression remained patient. You approved group batches. That is standard executive practice. Lila looked at the folders. Then the approvals should be easy to find. They are, Daniel said. They carry Evan's credentials. The room went still. Evan turned from the window. Mine? Daniel slid a summary across the desk. Every major batch was properly authorized. Lila watched Evan read. For the first time, doubt moved in the other direction. Not toward Daniel. Toward himself. Daniel closed the folder. This is why accusations should wait for facts. Lila stepped closer, stopping well short of the desk. Those aren't facts. They're conclusions printed on company paper. And what do you have? 2 real deliveries, no Northline trucks, no gate entries, no weight tickets, no destination receipts, and 37 invoices under the second approval limit. You have fragments you do not understand. Then help us understand them. Where did the freight go? Daniel's eyes held hers. We will provide the archive, he said. It sounded like cooperation. Lila heard a deadline. Maya did not let the service summaries leave Evan's office. She scanned each page into the audit archive, logged the time, and asked Daniel to sign a record showing what he had provided. He signed without hesitation. That won't make the summary source documents, she said. No, Daniel replied. It will prove I cooperated. After he left, Evan remained at his desk with the approval list in front of him. I sign hundreds of grouped expenses, he said. Daniel reviews them. Finance confirms the controls. I look for exceptions. Lila stood across the room. Northline was an exception. Not on this report. That's the point. He looked up. Do you think I stole from my own company? I think your name approved payments you don't remember. That wasn't my question. No. I don't think you built this. His shoulders lowered slightly. I think you made it easy for somebody else, she added. The relief disappeared. Maya gathered the pages. We need the original approval events, not Daniel's summary. Evan pushed his chair back. Pull them. I already requested them. Authentication detail is stored separately from the payment report. How long? An hour if the current logs are complete. And if they aren't? Monday. Monday was too late. Lila walked to the conference table and stopped at the chair farthest from Maya's computer. Look at the dates now. We have dates, Maya said. Compare them to something Evan remembers. Evan frowned. I remember approving expenses. Not 37 of them. Pick the largest payment. Maya turned the list around without exposing account information. The largest was $49,870. Approved 8 months earlier on a Saturday evening. Evan studied the date. His face changed. What? Maya asked. He did not answer. Lila waited. That was my mother's funeral, he said at last. No one spoke. Evan looked again as if the date might rearrange itself. The service was that morning in Knoxville. I stayed with my sister through Sunday. Did you work that evening? Maya asked. I answered calls. I didn't approve a batch. Could you have done it from your phone? Not then. Executive approvals required the laptop token. Lila felt the room narrow around the single fact. Where was the laptop? Evan pressed his fingers to his forehead. I don't know. Think. His eyes flashed. You do not get to interrogate me about that day. Lila softened her voice but did not retreat. I'm not asking about the funeral. I'm asking where your laptop was when somebody used your name. He looked toward the windows. For several seconds, anger was the only answer he had. Then he said, the battery had failed the day before I left. Technology support replaced it. I took a loaner to Tennessee. Maya was already writing. Was the approval token transferred to the loaner? No. I couldn't access the finance portal. Daniel said he would handle anything urgent until Monday. Lila sat down slowly. The story she had been telling herself shifted. Evan had been careless, proud, and quick to punish her. But the largest suspicious payment had been approved while he was burying his mother, using a machine he did not possess. He was not standing outside the fraud anymore. He had been used inside it. Maya opened a new form. I'm issuing a preservation request for executive authentication logs, technology service records, and finance access changes covering the Northline period. Evan looked at her. Do it without notifying finance. I can preserve the logs under internal audit authority. Expanding the investigation will require committee notice. Then notify them. Daniel is secretary to the audit committee. The problem sat plainly between them. Lila said, he controls the road to the people who can review him. Maya nodded once. That is why procedure matters. Evan stood. Procedure got us a report saying I approved a payment from another state. Bad procedure did. Proper procedure may prove it. Maya sent the preservation order. A confirmation number appeared on her screen. Now, she said, nobody with ordinary finance access can change or delete the retained copies. Lila let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Evan looked at her. The authority in his face was still there, but it no longer seemed settled. You believed I was involved, he said. I believed you might be protecting him. And now? Now I think he counted on you not knowing what you approved. Evan glanced at the laptop on his desk. That is not better. No. It's only different. Maya's first log extract arrived 20 minutes later. It did not identify a thief, but it confirmed that Evan's executive token had authorized the Saturday payment from his assigned laptop. The same laptop had been checked into technical support 36 hours earlier. Can someone copy a token? Lila asked. Maya answered carefully. Someone with elevated access could rebind it. Or the machine could have been accessed during service. We cannot say which from this extract. Who had elevated access? Evan asked. That list requires technology security review. Get it? I will. Lila studied the payment dates Maya had printed without account details. Don't only look for who could do it. Maya raised an eyebrow. What else? Look for who benefited from the approval pattern. The payments stay below $50,000. They arrive as grouped expenses. The warehouse takes the blame for freight overruns. Whoever did this understands finance, but also understands what you expect not to see. Evan's mouth tightened. Daniel designed the warehouse cost review. Maya said, that is relevant. It is not proof. He also had authority to handle urgent finance matters while I was away. Relevant. Still not proof. Lila looked at Evan. She's right. He gave a humorless laugh. You've been accusing me of blindness for 2 days. Now you want restraint. I want a case he can't dismiss as my anger or your embarrassment. The word struck him. Good. They needed to. Evan walked to the far end of the room. What do you need from me? It was the first time he had asked instead of ordered. Lila considered the question. Stop trying to decide whether I belong in the room, she said. Decide whether the facts do. Maya closed the preliminary file. For now the facts stay with audit. Ms. Brooks, you may continue as a historical process witness under my supervision. Mr. Mercer, you will not contact Daniel about the authentication issue until I preserve the remaining access records. Evan looked as if no one had spoken to him that way in years. Fine, he said. Lila rose to leave. At the door he stopped her. Ms. Brooks. She turned. I was wrong to assume your hand on that laptop told me everything about you. It was not an apology. Not yet. Lila nodded toward the approval list. And you were wrong to assume your name on a payment told you everything about it. She left him with that. By Friday evening, their problem was no longer whether Northline's invoices were strange. The problem was that someone had built those invoices to pass through Evan Mercer's authority without Evan Mercer. Saturday morning brought no new access records. Maya sent one message at 8, preservation complete. Review pending. Lila read it at her kitchen table beside an envelope from the electric company. Her final cleaning paycheck would cover rent and most of the bill, but not the prescription waiting at the pharmacy. She turned the envelope face down. Northline Transit Services remained a name on paper. Daniel could keep saying the work happened elsewhere as long as no one could prove what kind of company Northline really was. Lila knew someone who might know. For 14 years, she had spoken almost every week with Pete Halvorsen at Midstate Logistics. He had handled emergency carriers when Mercer's regular routes failed. Daniel had named Midstate as one of Northline's brokers. If that was true, Pete would remember. Maya had told her not to contact employees or vendors. Daniel had told her the same thing. Lila told herself Pete was neither. He was a former business contact, and she would ask only a general question. She found his number in an old Christmas card tucked behind a recipe book. Pete answered on the 4th ring. Halvorsen. It's Lila Brooks. There was a silence, then a warm laugh. Mercer Lila? I haven't been Mercer Lila for a long time. You're still the only person who ever rejected my invoice because I used blue ink. The amount was wrong. The ink felt more personal. She smiled despite herself. Do you know a carrier called Northline Transit Services? His tone changed. Why? I heard the name connected to Midstate. Connected how? As a brokered emergency carrier. Pete made a small sound. Not through us. You're sure? We don't broker industrial loads anymore, and I've never heard of Northline. Is this about Mercer? Lila looked at the envelope on the table. I can't discuss that. You just called me about it. I called to ask whether you knew the name. And now I know something is wrong. Regret arrived too late. Pete, don't call anyone. That is not a sentence people say when everything is fine. Please. She ended the call and sat with the phone in her hand. At noon Maya called. Did you contact Midstate Logistics? Lila closed her eyes. I contacted someone I used to know there. Why? To ask if Northline ever brokered freight through them. I specifically told you not to contact vendors. Midstate isn't active with Mercer anymore. That is not your determination to make. He said they never used Northline. And then he called Mercer's procurement office to ask why a former employee was questioning historical freight accounts. Lila stood so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. He called them? Daniel was informed within 20 minutes. The meeting at Mercer headquarters began at 2. This time, legal counsel joined by phone, though no new named person appeared on the conference screen. Daniel sat across from Lila with the incident report from Thursday and a written summary of Pete's call. This is now the second unauthorized attempt by Ms. Brooks to obtain confidential company information, Daniel said. I asked whether Midstate used Northline, Lila replied. That isn't confidential. You identified a vendor under internal review and connected it to Mercer. I did not say Mercer. Mr. Halvorsen says the context was obvious. Evan stood near the window. He had not looked at her since she entered. Maya said, the contact was outside the review protocol and may have alerted relevant parties before records were secured. The records were already preserved, Lila said. The authentication records were. External records were not. Daniel folded his hands. Whatever her intentions, she has demonstrated that she cannot respect confidentiality. Any continued involvement creates legal and evidentiary risk. Lila looked at Evan. The information is still true. That is not the only issue, he said. It's the main issue. No. Trust is the main issue when people are handling sensitive records. The words hit with more force because she had used them against him in another form. You fired me before you checked, she said. I wasn't going to sit at home while Daniel explained the money away. Daniel's expression remained composed. That statement illustrates the problem. Evan turned to Maya. What do you recommend? Ms. Brooks should have no further access to company systems or active review discussions. I can continue evaluating the preserved records independently. Lila felt the room close around her. Evan nodded. Then that's what we'll do. You need me to interpret the old payment structure. Maya can contact you with specific questions. By the time she knows which questions to ask, Monday's vote will be over. Daniel said, the warehouse decision is separate from this inquiry. No, it isn't. Evan's voice lowered. Lila, stop. She did, but only because she heard the disappointment in his voice and knew she had put it there. Outside the conference room, Ruth was waiting beside the elevators. What are you doing here? Lila asked. Daniel's office called Bell Facility Services. They're reviewing whether our contract created a security weakness. Lila leaned against the wall. I'm sorry. You said that yesterday. This time I earned it. Ruth looked through the glass wall toward the conference room. Did you call somebody? Lila nodded. After they told you not to? Yes. Ruth pressed the elevator button. Then you made it easy for him. They rode down without speaking. Instead of leaving, Ruth drove to the West Warehouse and parked near the employee entrance. The Saturday shift had ended. The break room was empty except for vending machines and rows of metal chairs. Lila sat with a paper cup of water. I can sign something saying I acted alone. Maybe they'll leave your contract alone. You did act alone. I mean, I'll withdraw the accusation. Ruth stared at her. Is it false? No. Then don't sign a lie to protect me from a man who's using my workers as a leash. They've already lost hours because of me. They lost hours because Evan Mercer fired first and asked questions later. You made a bad call today. That doesn't make the rest your fault. Lila looked down at her hands. I spent 17 years knowing what I was doing. Then one morning they told us a company in Arizona could do it cheaper. Since then, every room I walk into, somebody decides what I'm qualified to understand before I open my mouth. Ruth sat beside her. So you stopped asking permission? Yes. And now? Lila thought of Maya preserving records before making accusations. Len explaining procedure instead of offering outrage. Even Evan, for all his pride, had changed when facts required it. Now I ask permission when the work belongs to someone else, she said. And I make sure they can't use permission to bury the truth. Ruth nodded. That sounds harder. It is. Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number contained only a time and place. Sunday, 9 a.m. Hawthorne Coffee. We should discuss a resolution. The sender signed it D. Price. Ruth read over her shoulder. Are you going? Lila looked at the message, then at the dark warehouse windows. Yes, she said. But this time I'm not going alone in my own head. Hawthorne Coffee opened at 8 on Sundays. By 9, Every table near the windows was occupied by people reading newspapers or working on laptops. Lila chose a small table in the center of the room where no one could approach unseen. She placed her phone face down beside her coffee. She did not record the conversation. A secret recording would create another argument, and she already had enough of those. Daniel arrived exactly on time. No suit today. Gray sweater, dark coat, ordinary shoes. He looked like a man meeting a neighbor after church. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You didn't give me much reason. I hoped we could speak without an audience." "That depends on what you say." He ordered tea and sat across from her. "You've created a difficult situation for yourself." "I noticed a difficult situation for you." Daniel stirred honey into his cup. "This need not become personal. You told my employer I was a security risk. You contacted an outside party about a confidential review. I asked one question. And proved the concern." He set down the spoon. "I am not here to debate that. I'm here because Mercer mishandled your removal, and I believe the company should correct it." Lila waited. Daniel slid a folded document across the table. "Payment for your lost shifts through the end of the quarter. Reinstatement on the cleaning contract. A written statement that no theft or dishonesty finding has been made against you." She did not touch the paper. "What do I sign?" "A confidentiality agreement and a clarification." "What clarification?" "That you misinterpreted a preliminary payment screen and made statements beyond your knowledge." "Did I misinterpret the total?" "The total is not in dispute." "The missing deliveries?" "The work occurred through arrangements you were not authorized to review." "Then why pay me?" "To end damage created by misunderstandings on all sides." Lila looked around the coffee shop. A little girl at the next table was peeling the paper sleeve from a muffin while her grandfather tried to read. The scene was so normal that Daniel's offer almost felt normal too. 3 months of wages would cover the electric bill, the prescription, and the rent. Reinstatement would protect Ruth's contract. She could sign, go back to work, and let Evan and Maya decide what happened to Northline. It was the safest door anyone had offered her. "What happens to Monday's vote?" she asked. "That is a business decision. Based on losses Northline helped create. Based on years of operational performance." "And what happens to the review?" "Internal audit completes it without interference. Under a committee where you control the agenda." Daniel's expression cooled. "Be careful. There it is." "What?" "The part where the offer becomes a threat." He leaned forward. "You are 58 years old, recently terminated, and accused in writing of accessing confidential files. Bell Facility Services may decide you are too costly to retain. Other contractors may reach the same conclusion. I am trying to prevent unnecessary consequences. You're describing the consequences you arranged. I am describing reality." Lila pushed the folded document back toward him. "No." His hand rested on it. "You haven't read the amount." "I read the sentence you want my name under." "You did misunderstand the screen. You saw transactions, not theft." "I saw enough to ask where the freight went." "You still haven't answered." Daniel's eyes lost their practiced warmth. "You think refusing this makes you brave? It makes you exposed." "Maybe." Lila stood. "But it doesn't make me yours." She left before her need for the money could follow her back to the table. Evan called before she reached the bus stop. "Where are you?" "Outside Hawthorne Coffee." Pause. "Daniel met you?" "Yes." "What did he offer?" "Lost wages, reinstatement, and a statement clearing my record. In exchange, I say I misunderstood the screen." "Did you sign?" "No." Another pause, longer this time. "Come to the office." "I don't have access. I'm restoring it for one meeting under Maya's supervision." Maya was already in Evan's office when Lila arrived. 3 printed sets of records sat on the conference table. Payment history. Receiving searches. Authentication logs. No new evidence. Evan said, "Daniel has circulated a recommendation to proceed with the warehouse vote as scheduled. He characterizes Northline as an incomplete audit question unrelated to the closure." "When does the committee receive the review?" Lila asked. Daniel intends to summarize it verbally. Then he controls the meaning before they see the records. Maya tapped the 3 sets. The chair has agreed to hear a 15-minute control presentation before the vote. We must avoid unsupported allegations. Evan said, counsel can present. No, Lila replied. He frowned. You are not a lawyer. And this isn't a trial. It's a reconstruction. She pointed to the first stack. 1 invoice at a time. What was paid? What should have happened? What record is missing? Then the approval. Maya can do that. Maya knows the system. Len knows the doc. You know the approvals. I'm the one who knows why the 3 pieces belong together. Evan paced toward the windows. Daniel will challenge your credibility before you finish the first page. Then I won't ask them to trust me. I'll ask them to follow the records. Maya considered it. She should lead the factual sequence. I can authenticate the data and state the limits. Evan looked from Maya to Lila. If the committee asks who committed fraud, we say the records require an independent investigation, Lila said. We don't give them a conclusion we haven't earned. And if Daniel says the services happened off-site, we ask for 1 destination receipt tied to 1 invoice. If he says I approve the payments, we show where you were and where your laptop was. Then we ask who had authority to handle urgent finance access. Evan stopped pacing. That points at him. It points at a question he has to answer. Maya slid a meeting agenda across the table. The presentation begins at 10. Daniel can object to Ms. Brooks's presence, but the committee chair has authority to hear a relevant witness. Evan sat opposite Lila. You understand what happens if this fails? The warehouse may close. Ruth may lose the contract. I may never work in this building again. And you still want to do it? No, she said. I need to. She opened the payment history. Start with the first invoice, she said. At 9:58 Monday morning, Lila stood outside the audit committee conference room with the blue notebook in one hand. Evan noticed it. You won't need that. I know. Then why bring it? Because this started with 1 number nobody wanted. The doors opened. Daniel was already seated at the long table in the same dark blue suit he had worn Friday. Lila fixed her attention on the 3 document sets in front of Maya. Daniel spoke first. Before we proceed, I object to the presence of a terminated contractor who obtained financial information through unauthorized access and later contacted an outside party. Lila's stomach tightened. Maya answered. Ms. Brooks will not authenticate records or state a legal conclusion. She will explain the process connection that initiated the control review. I will verify every document she references. The committee chair asked Lila whether she understood those limits. Yes. You have 15 minutes. Lila remained standing. Northline invoice 1184, she began. Mercer paid $48,620 for emergency freight and off-site handling. Daniel leaned back as if the number proved his point. Lila continued. A legitimate freight service leaves 2 kinds of records. A payment record showing what the company spent, and an operating record showing what physically happened. Maya, is the payment record authentic? Yes. Len's authorized receiving search found no gate entry, dock appointment, weight ticket, bill of lading, inventory movement, exception report, or destination receipt tied to invoice 1184. Correct. Correct. Daniel said, as I have explained, Northline managed transfers that did not enter Mercer facilities. Lila turned to him. Then give the committee the destination. The archival search is incomplete. For invoice 1184? For several historical services. 1 destination. 1 receiver. 1 record showing anything moved. Daniel looked toward the committee. A missing warehouse document does not establish that contracted coordination did not occur. No, Lila said. That's why we checked the next invoice. She moved through 5 payments. Different dates. Different amounts. The same absence of physical confirmation. Maya verified each result. Daniel interrupted on the 6th. This is selective. Northline's engagement covered network services, not individual truckloads. Lila nodded. Then the invoices should describe network services. They describe expedited freight by load reference. Descriptions are abbreviated for accounting. Then source documents should expand them. They will. When? The review is ongoing. The warehouse vote was not waiting for it. The chair asked Daniel why closure materials included Northline costs as evidence of warehouse inefficiency when he now described the work as off-site network services. For the first time Daniel paused. The costs were allocated to the warehouse program, he said. By whom? Lila asked. Daniel looked at her. Finance, according to approved methodology. Lila placed the payment summary beside the receiving report. 37 invoices. Almost all below $50,000, where a second executive approval would have been required. That threshold is not evidence of avoidance, Daniel said. No. The approval record is the next question. Maya displayed the preserved authentication log. Daniel's posture changed by less than an inch. Lila pointed to the largest payment. This batch carries Evan Mercer's executive token. It was approved on a Saturday evening while Evan was in Tennessee for his mother's funeral. Daniel replied immediately. Executives approve remotely. Not with this token. His assigned laptop was checked into technology support before he left. The loaner could not access the finance portal. Evan spoke for the first time. I did not authorize that payment. Daniel turned toward him. You told me to handle urgent expenses. I told you to manage them. I did not give you authority to use my credentials. I did not use your credentials. Lila let the denial settle. She did not chase it. The preserved logs do not yet identify the person at the keyboard, she said. They established that the approval record cannot be accepted at face value. The same payments lack proof of service. Those payments were then used to support closing the warehouse where the services supposedly belonged. Daniel's voice remained controlled. This is speculation arranged to look like a finding. No, Lila said. It is 3 control failures arranged by date. She aligned the pages across the table. Money left. Freight did not appear. Approval happened when the named approver could not perform it. I cannot tell you from these records who owns Northline or where the money ended up. I can tell you that voting to close the warehouse before an independent review would turn missing proof into a business conclusion. The committee chair asked Maya whether the records had been preserved independently of finance. Yes. Can Mr. Price alter them? No. Daniel said, suspending the closure based on an unproven theory will cost this company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Lila closed the first folder. Then the cost belongs in the open where people can examine it. Not inside freight invoices no one can match to a delivery. The committee went into closed discussion. In the hall, Daniel stood apart from them, furious that the room had stopped accepting his definitions. 12 minutes later they were called back. The warehouse vote was postponed. Daniel's financial system access was suspended pending an external forensic review. Maya was authorized to transfer the preserved records directly to the outside team. No one applauded. No one announced that $2 million had been recovered. The committee chair thanked Lila for identifying the control discrepancy and reminded everyone that the investigation was only beginning. Daniel gathered nothing from the table. Security access had already been disabled, and Maya retained the documents. As he reached the door he looked at Lila. You have no idea what you've set in motion. Lila held his gaze. That's why people are going to follow the records. He left without another word. 3 days later, the West warehouse sounded exactly as it had before the committee meeting. Forklifts beeped. Dock doors rolled upward. Radios cracked with load numbers. The ordinary noise felt like a gift no one trusted yet. Lila stood with Ruth and Len beside the receiving office while the morning crew returned from break. The closure is paused for 60 days, Len said. Not canceled. I know. They restored next week's shifts. Ruth folded her arms. Including mine. Mercer withdrew the security complaint against Bell Facility Services. Lila looked at her. All of it. The part claiming my crew created the breach. Your incident report is under review. That sounds like a company way of saying they were wrong. It is not as satisfying as a normal person saying it. Len smiled, then turned serious. They found Northline's payment account. The outside auditors are tracing it. Lila shook her head. Don't tell me anything they haven't released. He raised both hands. Look at you. Following rules. I'm trying something new. That afternoon, Maya asked Lila to return to headquarters. Evan waited in a small conference room, not his office. A 2-page offer lay on the table. I owe you an apology, he said before she sat down. I treated authority as evidence. I saw your hand on my laptop and decided I understood your character. Lila looked at him. You cost me my job. I know. You threaten Ruth's people. I know that too. There was no defense attached to the words. That mattered more than she expected. He slid the offer toward her. Director of Payment Integrity. Permanent position. Lila read the title once and pushed it back. Evan blinked. The salary is on the second page. I'm not taking a title that makes this look like a reward for embarrassing the company. It's not. Then let the audit finish. She turned to Maya. You need help reconciling old vendor payments? For several months at least. Temporary assignment. Paid at the professional rate. I report to audit, not finance. Maya nodded. That would be useful. Evan almost argued, then stopped himself. All right. It was not the life Lila had before. It was not a fortune, a grand office, or a promise that nobody would underestimate her again. It was work she understood, offered on terms she had helped set. She signed the temporary agreement. When the meeting ended, Maya left to call the external team. Evan gathered his papers, then noticed his silver laptop still open at the end of the table. He paused beside the door. Lila? Yes. Would you close that for me? She looked at the laptop. 3 nights earlier, touching it had made her an intruder in his eyes. Now he waited without suspicion. Lila placed her hand on the cool silver lid. For one quiet second, she remembered the glowing number, the elevator doors, and the certainty that knowledge could remain inside a person even after a company took away her desk. Then she closed the laptop.